They set me up with the perfect woman, but I couldn't forget the Apache girl, the rancher said. The sun had just begun to rise over the wide-open plains, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and orange. The rancher, a man in his late 30s, was already awake, moving quietly through the wooden barn. The smell of hay and the soft lowing of cattle filled the air. He loved mornings like this. The world was calm, and for a few precious hours he felt connected to everything around him. Life on the ranch was not easy, but it was honest, and that honesty had a way of shaping the man he had become. His hands, rough and calloused from years of work, moved confidently as he checked the fences, filled the water troughs, and made sure every animal was safe and comfortable. The rancher had grown up in this small town, surrounded by wide fields, dusty roads, and the kind of people who believed in hard work and simple living. His family had owned this land for generations, and he had learned everything about it from his father. When his father passed away, the rancher had taken over the property, feeling both pride and a quiet weight of responsibility. There was no one else to run the place, no siblings, no relatives nearby, and that made him lonely sometimes. He had friends, yes, and neighbors who stopped by to check on him or share a cup of coffee, but the kind of companionship that filled the heart was missing. He often thought about it as he worked, how life had a way of being beautiful yet bittersweet. He had seen friends marry, start families, and build lives filled with laughter and love. He had watched them celebrate birthdays, anniversaries, and small joys that seemed so ordinary but meant everything to them. And yet, for him, it had always been just him and the land. The rancher didn't mind being alone most of the time. The land gave him purpose, the animals gave him company, and the endless skies gave him peace. But in quiet moments, when he rested against the fence and looked out over the fields, he felt a tug at his heart, a reminder that something was missing. The memory of her came to him often, uninvited but vivid. She was an Apache girl, someone he had met years ago during a brief trip to a neighboring town. She was unlike anyone he had ever known, strong, brave, and full of life that seemed to move with the wind and the earth. He remembered the first time he saw her, standing by a small river, her hair catching the sunlight, her laughter echoing across the water. She had this way of seeing the world that was entirely her own, unshaped by rules or expectations. He had been drawn to her immediately, not just by her beauty, but by the way she made him feel alive, like the world was bigger than the boundaries of his ranch and his life of routine. But life had its way of moving forward, even when hearts were not ready. Their paths had crossed only briefly, and circumstances had pulled them apart. He never saw her again, and yet she remained, a quiet presence in his memory. Her face would come to him in moments of silence, her voice in the rustling of leaves, her laughter in the call of a distant bird. He didn't think about her with sadness, but with a kind of longing that never faded. She was a reminder of a world he had glimpsed but never fully stepped into, a life that could have been, a love that was fleeting yet unforgettable. Despite these memories, the rancher continued his daily life with steady determination. He moved from the barn to the fields, checking fences and repairing anything that needed fixing. Every task was done with care, every action deliberate. His neighbors respected him for his hard work, for the way he cared for the land, and for the honesty he carried in his actions. They knew he was a good man, a reliable man, someone who could be counted on in times of trouble. Yet when they asked about his personal life, he would smile politely and change the subject. Marriage, love, companionship, these were topics he had avoided, not because he did not desire them, but because he had not found the right person to share his world with. The rancher's life had a rhythm all its own, dictated by the rising and setting of the sun, the feeding of cattle, and the changing of the seasons. He knew each animal by name, each field by heart, and each corner of the land as if it were a part of him. Yet for all the familiarity, there was a part of him that remained untamed, restless, seeking something beyond the horizon. Sometimes, late at night, he would sit on the porch of his small wooden house, a cup of coffee warming his hands, and look at the stars. The vast sky reminded him that life had mysteries he could not control, paths he could not predict, and moments that came and went like the wind across the plains. And in those moments, the memory of the Apache girl would visit him again, as if carried by the night breeze, reminding him of a time when the world had seemed full of possibilities he could not yet reach. Neighbors and friends often spoke of the idea of setting him up with someone, a woman who would be perfect for a life on the ranch. They imagined a kind, gentle woman who could share his days, help with the work, and bring warmth to the quiet nights. The rancher would smile at their suggestions, polite but non-committal. He appreciated their intentions, he truly did, but he knew in his heart that no one had yet sparked the feeling he remembered from his time with the Apache girl. There was a sense of longing, a part of him that could not forget that fleeting connection, that brief encounter that had left a permanent mark on his heart. Even so, life required him to continue. He could not linger in memories alone. There were fences to mend, fields to plow, and cattle to care for. The ranch demanded attention, and he gave it fully, not as a distraction from his loneliness, but as a fulfillment of responsibility and purpose. There was satisfaction in this labor, in the knowledge that he was maintaining something enduring, something that would last beyond him. The rancher found comfort in routine, but the memory of the Apache girl reminded him that comfort alone was not enough to fill the heart. Love in its truest form was something that stirred the soul, that made even the most ordinary moments feel extraordinary. As the sun climbed higher, he finished his morning chores and stood at the edge of the field, wiping sweat from his brow. The wind carried the scent of grass, earth, and distant wildflowers. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the warmth of the sun and the sound of the land fill him. He allowed himself a small smile, thinking of her, not with regret but with a gentle acceptance. The Apache girl had come into his life, however briefly, and had left a mark that nothing could erase. It was a memory that shaped him, that reminded him of what it meant to truly feel, to truly care, to truly connect with another human being in a way that transcended ordinary experience. The day stretched ahead, filled with work and the quiet promise of routine. He moved back into the barn, attending to the animals, feeding the horses, and making sure the cows were comfortable. Each action was precise, methodical, a reflection of the man he had become. Yet even as he worked, the memory of the Apache girl lingered, weaving through the mundane tasks like a soft, persistent thread. It was a part of him now, a gentle reminder that life was more than work, more than routine. It was about connection, about moments that left a lasting impression, about the people who touched our hearts in ways we never forget. By evening, the rancher sat on the porch again, the sky now painted in deeper shades of red and purple. He watched the sun sink behind the distant hills, feeling the satisfaction of a day well spent. The animals were settled, the fences repaired, and the land secure. Yet in the quiet moments between tasks and responsibilities, he felt the pull of the past, the echo of laughter that had once filled a riverbank, the sight of eyes that had looked at him with unspoken understanding. The Apache girl was a memory that refused to fade, a part of his story that had shaped him, that had taught him about the depths of feeling and the lasting power of brief encounters. And so, life continued. The rancher moved forward, tending to his duties, living with purpose, and carrying in his heart a memory that was as real as the land beneath his feet. It was a quiet, bittersweet existence, full of work, solitude, and reflection. But it was his life, shaped by love, memory, and the enduring beauty of the land he called home. And somewhere in the folds of his heart, he knew that no matter what the future held, the Apache girl would always be a part of him, a reminder of a connection that was fleeting yet unforgettable, and a testament to the way a single encounter can shape an entire life. The rancher had always been careful about his heart. Life on the ranch required focus, discipline, and dedication, and there had never seemed to be time for distractions. Yet, friends and family had long noticed the quiet longing in his eyes, the way he seemed to drift into thought during ordinary conversations, and the way he smiled at memories that no one else could see. They wanted to help him, to ease the loneliness that had settled over his life like a soft, persistent shadow. So, with the best intentions, they began to set things in motion. One afternoon, a cousin named Martha arrived at the ranch with a cheerful energy that could fill an entire room. She was a small woman with bright eyes and an endless stream of ideas. She had known the rancher since he was a boy and understood his temperament better than most. "You need someone to share your life with," she said, brushing her hair back and looking him directly in the eye. "Someone who can ride with you, laugh with you, and make this place feel even more like home." The rancher smiled politely, running his rough hand over the back of his neck. "I appreciate that, Martha, but I've always managed fine on my own," he said, though he felt a small ache in his chest at her words. He did manage fine, but there was no denying that companionship could bring warmth to the quiet nights and comfort to the long days. Martha, however, was not one to be easily discouraged. She had already spoken to a young woman named Clara, a teacher from the town nearby. Clara was everything Martha believed a rancher could want: gentle, intelligent, kind, and willing to embrace a life filled with work, sun, and sometimes solitude. She had spent her early years teaching children in the little schoolhouse, and her patience and understanding were well known in the community. Martha was convinced that Clara would be the perfect companion for the rancher, and with that conviction, she insisted on arranging a meeting. The first encounter took place on a warm spring afternoon. The rancher had been fixing a fence near the edge of the field when Martha led Clara down the dusty path. Clara's eyes sparkled with curiosity and excitement, and her smile seemed to light up the open space between them. She greeted him politely, her voice calm but full of warmth. The rancher shook her hand, noticing the softness in her grip and the way she held herself with quiet confidence. At first, there was a formal politeness between them, the kind that comes from meeting someone for the very first time. They spoke of the weather, the work on the ranch, and the challenges of life in the country. Despite the natural ease of the conversation, the rancher could not ignore the contrast between Clara and the memory of the Apache girl. Clara was wonderful in every way, yet she was different, so different, from the girl whose laughter and spirit had once captured his heart. Still, he admired Clara's courage and her willingness to step into a world that was new to her. She asked questions, listened attentively, and showed genuine interest in the land he loved so much. For the first time in a long while, he felt a flicker of hope that perhaps companionship was possible, even if it was not the fiery, unforgettable connection he had once known. Over the next few weeks, Clara visited the ranch often. She helped with small tasks, feeding the horses, organizing the barn, and preparing meals for the rancher when the days had been long. They rode together through the fields, checking fences and watching the cattle graze. There were moments of laughter, shared stories, and quiet evenings on the porch watching the sunset. The rancher found himself appreciating her company more than he expected. She had a way of making the ranch feel alive in a different way, bringing a gentle warmth to the routine he had once carried alone. Yet, no matter how much he tried to focus on Clara, his thoughts often drifted to the Apache girl. He remembered the first time he had seen her by the river, the way her eyes had sparkled with life, the strength in her voice, and the laughter that had seemed to echo across the hills. Those memories were not painful, they were bittersweet, but they tugged at his heart with a persistent pull. He found himself comparing the two, wondering if he was capable of feeling for Clara in the same way he had once felt for the girl from the past. There were moments when Clara noticed his distant gaze. "You seem lost in thought," she said gently one evening as they sat by the fire, the stars bright overhead. The rancher shook his head and smiled faintly. "Just thinking about life, I suppose," he replied, not wanting to burden her with memories that could not be explained. Clara, sensing his hesitation, did not press further. She had patience, and she seemed to understand that some parts of a person's past could not be easily shared. Despite the lingering memories, the rancher began to appreciate the reality of his life with Clara. She was kind, thoughtful, and intelligent. She brought new energy to the ranch, organizing small improvements, planting flowers near the house, and even teaching him a few simple recipes that added variety to their meals. There were quiet evenings when they talked for hours, sharing hopes, dreams, and stories of their childhoods. The rancher found himself smiling more, laughing more, and feeling a sense of connection he had not experienced in years. Still, the Apache girl remained in his heart. He would catch himself remembering the way she had moved through the forest, her hand brushing against leaves as if she were part of the earth itself. Her laughter would come to him unexpectedly, carried on the wind or triggered by some small sound. Even the sight of a river or the way the sun set behind the hills could bring back memories that were sharp and vivid. He wondered if it was fair to Clara, to allow her into his life while a part of him remained elsewhere. The rancher had always valued honesty, and he knew that one day he would have to confront these feelings. Yet, life had a way of moving forward, and Clara's presence brought a new rhythm to his days. They shared meals under the open sky, rode through fields with horses, and even attended local events together, where neighbors and friends welcomed them warmly. He found joy in small gestures, a smile, a kind word, a shared moment of quiet understanding. Clara was patient and gentle, and she seemed to sense that his heart carried memories he could not easily release. For this, he respected her even more, and his admiration for her grew alongside his unresolved feelings for the Apache girl. In quiet moments, the rancher would reflect on the contrast between the past and present. Clara represented stability, understanding, and the possibility of a shared life. The Apache girl represented freedom, passion, and a connection that had been fleeting but unforgettable. He realized that life often offered choices that were complicated and sometimes painful. One path could bring comfort and companionship. The other carried the memory of a love that could never be fully reclaimed. The rancher understood that both were important, that both shaped who he was, and that neither could be ignored. There were nights when he would sit on the porch after a long day, watching the stars appear one by one, feeling the cool breeze on his face. Clara would sometimes join him, her presence quiet but comforting, and they would speak of simple things, the weather, the cattle, the beauty of the land. Other times he would sit alone, allowing his thoughts to drift to the Apache girl, remembering her strength, her laughter, and the way she had made him feel alive. These moments were bittersweet, a reminder that life was never simple, that love was rarely easy, and that the heart often carried conflicting emotions that could not be easily reconciled. As spring turned to summer, the rancher continued to work the land, care for the animals, and navigate the new dynamic that Clara brought into his life. He learned to balance the present with the past, appreciating the gentle warmth that Clara offered while honoring the memories that remained with him. It was not always easy. There were moments of doubt, moments of longing, and moments when the past seemed closer than the present. Yet, through it all, he moved forward with honesty and care, determined to face his feelings with integrity and respect for those involved. By the end of the summer, the rancher had begun to see the beauty in both parts of his life, the stability and companionship of the present with Clara, and the unforgettable memory of the Apache girl that had shaped his heart. He understood that life was not about choosing between one and the other, but about carrying both with grace and acceptance. The experience taught him about the complexity of human emotions, the power of memory, and the importance of embracing both the past and the present. The rancher's days continued, filled with work, laughter, and moments of quiet reflection. Clara remained a bright presence, helping him navigate the rhythms of the ranch and bringing warmth to his life. Yet the Apache girl was never far from his thoughts, a reminder of what it meant to truly feel, to truly connect, and to hold onto memories that shaped the soul. The rancher understood that love could take many forms, that companionship could provide comfort, and that memory could provide lessons that lasted a lifetime. And so he moved forward, carrying both the present and the past with him, learning to live fully, honestly, and with an open heart. Life on the ranch had settled into a comfortable rhythm, but the rancher's mind was far from settled. Even with Clara visiting more frequently, helping with chores, riding alongside him through the fields, and sharing quiet evenings on the porch, his thoughts often drifted to the Apache girl. It was not that he wanted to dwell in the past, but the memories of her were vivid and persistent, refusing to fade no matter how much he tried to focus on the present. Some days, the memories came unexpectedly. The scent of wildflowers in the field reminded him of a riverbank they had once visited together. The sound of birdsong or the rustling of leaves in the wind would conjure her laughter, light and full of life, as if she were there beside him. Even the feel of sunlight on his skin seemed to carry her presence. It was as though the world itself whispered reminders of a connection that had left a permanent mark on his heart. He loved Clara in her way, and he appreciated everything she brought into his life. Her patience, her kindness, and her willingness to adapt to life on the ranch made the days brighter. She had a gentle warmth that complemented his hard-working nature, and there were moments when he felt he could almost let go of the past. Yet every time he came close to fully embracing the present, the memory of the Apache girl tugged him back. This inner struggle was most evident during the quiet moments. Late one afternoon, as they repaired a broken fence together, Clara hummed a soft tune while working. The rancher's hands moved automatically, mending the wooden rails, but his mind drifted. He remembered the Apache girl standing by the water, singing softly to herself as she braided reeds together. Her voice had been delicate yet confident, a melody that seemed to belong to the world itself. The rancher felt a pang of longing, a sense that part of his heart belonged to a time and place he could never return to. Despite these pangs, life demanded attention. There were always fences to fix, fields to check, and cattle to tend. Clara helped wherever she could, and sometimes her presence made the work lighter, even enjoyable. She asked questions, shared stories about her students, and laughed at small things he had long taken for granted. She brought a new rhythm to the ranch, one that was softer and quieter than his own, but comforting in its own way. Yet even as he appreciated her, he struggled with guilt. He could not fully explain to Clara the depth of the memories he carried. How could he tell her that his heart sometimes belonged elsewhere, to someone he had only known briefly? He knew that honesty was important, but he feared that revealing his inner conflict might hurt her or drive her away. And so, he remained silent, carrying the memories of the Apache girl privately while presenting a calm and collected exterior to Clara. Small triggers kept the memory alive. One morning, while checking the water supply for the cattle, he noticed a cluster of wildflowers growing near the edge of the river. Their delicate colors reminded him of the Apache girl's hair catching the sunlight as she laughed beside the water. A memory flashed in his mind. The way she had thrown her head back, free and untamed, the sunlight illuminating every strand, her eyes sparkling with joy. He stopped for a moment, taking a deep breath, allowing himself to feel the memory fully before returning to the work at hand. Evenings were the hardest. After the day's labor was done, he and Clara would sit on the porch, the sky a canvas of pinks and purples, the stars slowly appearing overhead. Clara would talk about her day, her students, and her dreams, and he would listen, genuinely interested, offering his own stories in return. There were moments of laughter, shared glances, and comfortable silence that made him feel he could almost belong entirely in the present. But then, when the wind rustled through the trees or a bird called in the distance, the memory of the Apache girl would return with startling clarity. He could see her eyes, hear her voice, and feel the energy she had radiated. The rancher often asked himself difficult questions. Did he love Clara enough to move forward despite the memory of someone else? Was it fair to her that part of his heart remained elsewhere? Could he ever fully embrace a future with her, or was he destined to live with the bittersweet echo of a love that had come and gone? These questions haunted him, and he spent long nights staring at the stars, seeking answers he could not easily find. Occasionally, the rancher would take long walks alone, riding out to the far edges of his property where the river ran and the hills rolled endlessly. There he allowed himself to think freely, to remember without restriction, and to confront the emotions he had tried to suppress. He recalled the Apache girl's courage, her laughter, and the way she had lived fully in every moment. He remembered the conversations they had shared, the unspoken understanding, and the way the world had seemed brighter when she was near. These memories were bittersweet. They brought joy, but they also reminded him of what he had lost and could never reclaim. Clara, for her part, remained unaware of the depth of his internal struggle. She sensed the occasional distance in his eyes, but attributed it to the hard work and long days on the ranch. She continued to support him, offering gentle words of encouragement and sharing her own stories to bring light into his life. Her patience and understanding were remarkable, yet the rancher felt the weight of his unspoken thoughts. He knew he could not hide from them forever, and the longer he delayed, the more complicated things could become. Despite the inner turmoil, the rancher continued to live fully in the present, appreciating what Clara brought to his life. He began to notice small details, the way she smiled when she saw a foal playing in the field, the way she laughed at an awkward joke, the way she offered a hand when he stumbled while repairing a fence. These moments were precious, and he found himself cherishing them even as the memories of the Apache girl tugged at him from the past. It was a delicate balance, walking between what was and what had been, and he approached it with as much honesty and care as he could muster. One afternoon, while sitting on a hill overlooking the fields, the rancher reflected on the complexities of the heart. Love was rarely simple, he realized. It could be layered, filled with contradictions, and impossible to fully understand. He could love Clara in one way while carrying the memory of another woman in a different way. It was not a betrayal, he told himself. It was the reality of human emotion, the way memories and experiences shape a person over time. Accepting this did not make the struggle easier, but it allowed him to move forward with clarity and integrity. As the summer days stretched on, the rancher's awareness of his feelings grew. He began to understand that the memories of the Apache girl were not meant to prevent him from finding happiness. They were a part of his life story, a testament to the depth of his capacity to love and remember. At the same time, he recognized that Clara offered a chance to build a life grounded in trust, companionship, and shared experiences. Balancing these two realities was not simple, but he approached it with patience, knowing that the journey was as important as the destination. Evenings continued to be filled with conversation, laughter, and shared silence. The rancher would sometimes catch himself smiling at something Clara said, feeling warmth in his chest that reminded him of the quiet joy of companionship. Other times he would pause, letting the wind carry his thoughts back to the Apache girl, feeling the gentle tug of memory and longing. It was a constant interplay between past and present, a dance that shaped his every day and made his emotions feel larger, deeper, and more vivid. Through it all, the rancher learned to live with the complexity of his feelings. He did not shy away from the past, nor did he close his heart to the present. Instead, he allowed both to coexist, recognizing that life was rarely simple, love was rarely straightforward, and the heart often carried more than one story at a time. This understanding brought a quiet peace, even amid the ongoing struggle between memory and reality. By the end of summer, the rancher had grown in ways he could not have anticipated. He had learned to appreciate Clara's presence without denying the memories of the Apache girl. He had learned to embrace the joy of companionship while honoring the depth of past experiences. And he had learned that the heart was capable of holding both love and memory, of cherishing the present while carrying the past gracefully. As the sun set over the ranch, painting the sky in shades of orange and violet, the rancher stood at the edge of the field, feeling the warmth on his face and the gentle wind at his back. Clara sat nearby, humming softly, a comforting presence in the quiet evening. And yet in the folds of his memory, the Apache girl remained, a reminder of what had been, a spark that had shaped him, and a lesson in the enduring power of connection. The rancher knew that life would continue to bring challenges, choices, and moments of longing. But he also knew that he could face them with honesty, patience, and an open heart, carrying both the past and the present with him as he navigated the path ahead. The rancher could feel the weight of time pressing on him. Summer was turning into autumn, and the air had a sharp, crisp edge that reminded him that the seasons moved quickly, whether he was ready or not. The ranch was alive with activity. Cattle were being prepared for the colder months, fences were reinforced, and fields were readied for the winter frost. Clara remained by his side most days, helping wherever she could, learning the rhythms of the ranch, and bringing a lightness to the work that made even the most tedious tasks seem easier. Yet, despite all of her efforts and kindness, the rancher could not shake the persistent memories of the Apache girl. He loved the life he had built, loved the quiet beauty of the land, and respected the strength and care Clara brought into it. But the past was a constant companion, one that could appear suddenly in the soft rustle of leaves, the curve of a river, or the golden light of a sunset. Each memory carried with it an echo of the emotions he had felt all those years ago: joy, excitement, curiosity, and a sense of being alive in a way that had not been matched since. He began to understand that he could not ignore these feelings. They were not fleeting. They were a part of him, shaping the man he had become and reminding him of the depth of his heart. One evening, after a long day of checking cattle and repairing fences, the rancher found himself alone on the porch, watching the sky turn shades of deep red and purple. Clara had gone inside to prepare dinner, humming a soft tune as she moved through the kitchen. He sipped a cup of coffee, feeling the warmth in his hands, and let his mind wander. The memories of the Apache girl came unbidden. He remembered the way she had spoken with confidence, the way her eyes had seemed to reflect the world around her, and the way she had made him feel a connection he had never known before. The rancher realized that he was at a crossroads. He could not continue without confronting the reality of his feelings. To continue with Clara without acknowledging the pull of the past would be unfair, both to her and to himself. He began to understand that he needed clarity, that he needed to explore his own heart and determine what he truly wanted. This was not a decision to be made lightly. It would require honesty, courage, and the willingness to face emotions that were complicated and at times painful. The next morning, he set out on a solitary ride, heading toward the places that held memories of the Apache girl. The river where they had met, the small grove where they had shared stories, and the open fields where they had laughed together. All of these places were filled with echoes of the past. As he rode, he allowed himself to remember fully, without restraint. He remembered her laughter, her strength, and the way she had moved through the world with a sense of freedom that he had admired and envied in equal measure. These memories brought both comfort and sadness. He felt grateful for having known her, for having experienced a connection so profound, even if it had been brief. But he also felt the ache of loss, the longing for a time and a person who could not be returned to. He realized that he had been carrying these feelings for years, tucked away beneath the routines and responsibilities of ranch life, and that it was time to face them openly. Upon returning home, he found Clara tending to the horses. She looked up, smiling warmly, and greeted him. "Did you enjoy your ride?" she asked, brushing her hands on her apron. He nodded, forcing a smile, and responded, "Yes, it was good to be out in the fields." But inside, he knew that his thoughts were far away. He understood that he would soon need to speak with Clara, to share some of the truth about his heart, even if it was difficult. Days passed, and the rancher observed the delicate balance between past and present. He continued to work alongside Clara, appreciating her care, her energy, and her willingness to embrace life on the ranch. Yet, in quiet moments, the memories of the Apache girl would return with vivid clarity. Each recollection was a reminder that life was layered with emotion, that the heart could carry multiple stories, and that love was rarely straightforward. Friends and family began to notice his distance. They sensed the subtle tension in his eyes, the way he seemed to drift into thought even during conversations, and the way he occasionally became quiet when Clara was near. Concerned, they approached him gently. "You need to be honest with yourself," his cousin Martha said one afternoon, her voice soft but firm. "If your heart is elsewhere, it's not fair to Clara or to you. You need to figure out what you truly want before anyone's heart is hurt." Her words struck him deeply. He knew she was right. The rancher had been avoiding the truth for too long, and now it was time to face it head-on. He spent the evening reflecting on his feelings, writing thoughts in a small notebook he kept hidden in his room. He wrote about Clara, the kindness she had shown, the warmth she brought to his days, and the potential for a future together. Then he wrote about the Apache girl, the memories, the joy, the connection that had shaped him, and the realization that some things could never be reclaimed. Through this reflection, he began to understand that he needed clarity not only for himself, but also for Clara. It was not fair to allow her to invest her heart fully if part of his remained tied to the past. He knew that he needed to speak honestly, to explain the complexity of his emotions, and to allow both himself and Clara the chance to move forward with understanding. One crisp morning, he invited Clara to ride with him to the river, a place that had always brought him peace. As they rode side by side, he spoke gently, choosing his words with care. "Clara," he began, "there's something I need to tell you. I care about you, more than I can express, but there's a part of my heart that has always carried memories of someone from my past. It's not fair to you for me to hide this, and I need you to know the truth before we move forward." Clara listened quietly, her eyes filled with understanding. She did not interrupt or judge. She simply nodded, allowing him to speak freely. The rancher continued, explaining the memories of the Apache girl, the depth of the connection he had felt, and the way it had shaped who he was. He spoke of the conflict he felt, between appreciating the present with Clara and honoring the past that remained vivid in his heart. When he finished, there was a long silence between them. Clara reached out and placed a hand gently on his arm. "Thank you for being honest," she said softly. "I can see how important your memories are to you, and I respect that. It doesn't mean we can't have a future together, but it does mean that we need to be patient, honest, and understanding with each other." Her response brought a sense of relief the rancher had not anticipated. He realized that honesty, even when difficult, could create connection rather than destroy it. Clara's patience and openness reminded him that love was not always about perfection or absence of complication. It was about understanding, acceptance, and the willingness to navigate life's challenges together. In the weeks that followed, the rancher continued to reflect on his feelings while deepening his bond with Clara. They rode together, worked side by side, and shared quiet evenings under the stars. He allowed himself to remember the Apache girl, but he also allowed himself to embrace the present, appreciating the gentle warmth and companionship Clara offered. The balance was not easy, but it was real, honest, and full of meaning. Through this journey, the rancher realized that life was not about choosing between past and present as if one invalidated the other. Instead, it was about carrying both with grace, learning from memories, and allowing new experiences to coexist with old ones. He understood that the heart was capable of holding multiple truths, that love could take different forms, and that embracing complexity was part of living fully. As autumn deepened and the days grew shorter, the rancher stood on the porch one evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon. Clara sat nearby, humming softly, a comforting presence in the quiet evening. He thought about the Apache girl, the memories that had shaped him, and the lessons they had taught him about connection, courage, and the depth of human emotion. He also thought about Clara, the life they could build together, and the shared moments that made each day brighter. The rancher knew that the future was uncertain, that life could bring challenges and choices that tested the heart. But he also knew that he had the capacity to face them with honesty, patience, and an open heart. He had confronted his feelings, acknowledged the past, and embraced the present. And in doing so, he had discovered a deeper understanding of himself, of love, and of what it meant to carry both memory and hope into the days ahead. The rancher felt a quiet stillness settle over the land as autumn deepened. The mornings were colder, the sky crisper, and the fields readying themselves for the first touch of frost. Life on the ranch had its rhythm, unchanging yet comforting, but the rancher knew that change had come to him in ways he had not anticipated. Over the past months, he had faced emotions that had long been buried, revisited memories that shaped him, and learned truths about his heart that were both painful and freeing. Clara continued to be a steady presence in his life, her patience and kindness growing alongside the trust they had built. She understood the complexity of his emotions and did not shy away from it. She had accepted that the rancher carried memories of the Apache girl, that a part of his heart belonged to the past, and yet she remained. Her presence was not demanding. It was gentle, understanding, and honest. That honesty, he realized, was rare and beautiful, a gift that not everyone could offer. One crisp morning, the rancher rose before sunrise, saddled his horse, and rode to the far edge of the property where the river ran. He needed a moment alone, a chance to reflect on all that had come before and all that lay ahead. The river flowed steadily, the water glinting with the first light of day, and for a moment he allowed himself to be fully immersed in the memory of the Apache girl. He remembered her laughter, the way she had moved with confidence, her voice singing softly across the water. These memories were not painful, they were bittersweet, filled with the beauty of a connection that had left a permanent mark on his heart. As he sat on the bank of the river, he realized that those memories would always be a part of him. They had shaped his understanding of love, courage, and joy, and they had given him insight into the depth of human connection. Yet he also understood that life had moved forward, that the world offered him new experiences and new possibilities, and that holding onto the past did not mean rejecting the present. The Apache girl had been a chapter in his life, unforgettable and meaningful, but it was time to live fully in the chapter he was now writing. Returning to the ranch, he found Clara tending to the horses, her movements calm and purposeful. She looked up and smiled as he approached. "Morning," she said softly. "The sky is beautiful today." The rancher nodded, feeling a warmth in his chest at her simple words. He realized that he could hold the past and the present together, not as a conflict, but as two pieces of the story that made him whole. Clara's presence was a part of his reality now, and it was a reality he wanted to embrace. Over the following weeks, the rancher continued to work alongside Clara, repairing fences, checking the cattle, and preparing the fields for winter. Each day brought small moments of joy, shared laughter over a spilled bucket of water, quiet conversation during a long ride, or the simple pleasure of sitting together on the porch as the sun set behind the hills. These moments were grounding, reminding him that life was not only about memories, but also about presence, care, and shared experiences. One evening, as the sky turned a deep shade of violet and the first stars appeared, the rancher and Clara sat on the porch in comfortable silence. The rancher felt a sense of peace he had not known in years. He reached out and took her hand gently, feeling the warmth of her presence. "Clara," he began, his voice quiet but steady, "I've carried memories for a long time, memories of someone who changed my life in ways I can never forget. But I've also come to realize that life is happening now, and I want to be present for it with you." Clara squeezed his hand, her eyes reflecting understanding and quiet happiness. "I'm glad," she said softly. "We all carry the past with us, but it doesn't mean we can't build something beautiful in the present. I'm here, and I'm willing to share this life with you." Her words brought a sense of relief and warmth that the rancher had not anticipated. He realized that love was not about perfection or forgetting. It was about honesty, patience, and the willingness to grow together. As the days grew colder and the first frost appeared on the fields, the rancher and Clara continued to navigate life together. They faced challenges, repairing fences damaged by wind, ensuring the cattle were fed through unexpected storms, and managing the countless small tasks that came with running a ranch. Yet through every challenge, they found strength in one another, building trust, understanding, and a bond that deepened with each passing day. The rancher often reflected on the lessons he had learned. He had realized that the heart could carry multiple layers of connection, that memories of the past were not enemies to happiness, and that true companionship required patience, empathy, and honesty. He understood that life was rarely simple, that love was rarely straightforward, and that growth often came from embracing both joy and longing. These realizations gave him a sense of clarity and peace he had not known before. One late afternoon, he decided to revisit some of the places that held memories of the Apache girl, not to dwell on the past but to honor it. He rode to the river, the grove where they had shared stories, and the open fields where they had laughed together. Standing in those spaces, he allowed himself to remember fully, feeling gratitude for the experiences and the lessons they had brought. He acknowledged that those moments had shaped him, but they did not define the entirety of his life. He could carry them with him while still embracing the present and the future. Returning to the ranch, he found Clara waiting with a warm meal and a smile. They ate together quietly, enjoying the simple pleasures of food, conversation, and companionship. The rancher realized that happiness did not always come in grand gestures or dramatic moments. It often came in the quiet, consistent presence of someone who understood, supported, and shared life's journey. Clara had become that presence for him, and he was ready to embrace it fully. As winter approached, the rancher reflected on how much he had grown. He had faced the complexity of his emotions, confronted memories that had lingered for years, and learned to navigate the delicate balance between past and present. He had discovered that love could be layered, that the heart could hold both memory and hope, and that the most meaningful connections were built on honesty, understanding, and patience. These insights gave him confidence and a sense of peace as he looked toward the future. One evening, as the first snowflakes began to fall gently over the ranch, the rancher and Clara stood outside, watching the landscape transform. The world was quiet and still, the fields blanketed in white, the trees heavy with snow. He took Clara's hand in his, feeling the warmth and reassurance of her presence. "Life is full of surprises," he said softly, "and sometimes it gives us more than we expect, memories, lessons, and people who make everything feel worthwhile." Clara nodded, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the setting sun. And sometimes it gives us the chance to create something new, something real and something lasting, she said. Her words resonated deeply with the rancher. He realized that while the Apache girl would always hold a special place in his heart, life had offered him a new chapter, one filled with possibility, companionship, and love in a form that was honest and real. In the following months, the rancher and Clara continued to build their life together. They faced the challenges of winter, cared for the animals, repaired fences, and celebrated small joys. Each day brought new moments to cherish: a shared meal, a quiet walk through the snow-covered fields, or the simple pleasure of sitting together by the fire. These moments grounded them, strengthened their bond, and reminded the rancher that life was a collection of experiences, both old and new, that shaped the heart and soul. The rancher often thought about the Apache girl, but now those memories brought peace rather than longing. He understood that the past had shaped him, taught him, and shown him the depth of his emotions, but it did not prevent him from embracing the present. Clara's presence, patience, and understanding allowed him to live fully, love fully, and find joy in the ordinary moments of life. He had learned that the heart could hold multiple truths, that memories and reality could coexist, and that embracing both with honesty and grace was the key to a meaningful life. As spring approached again, the rancher felt a sense of renewal. The fields were turning green, the animals healthy and active, and the days longer and brighter. He and Clara worked side by side, tending to the land, caring for the cattle, and enjoying the simple pleasures of life together. The rancher felt gratitude for the journey he had taken, the memories he had cherished, the challenges he had faced, and the love he had found in the present. One evening, as the sun set over the rolling hills, the rancher and Clara stood on the porch, watching the sky turn shades of gold and pink. He took her hand gently and smiled, feeling a sense of peace and contentment he had never known before. "Life isn't always easy," he said softly, "but it's the journey, the people we meet, and the memories we carry that make it beautiful." Clara squeezed his hand, her eyes filled with warmth and understanding. "And it's the love we choose to nurture, day by day, that gives it meaning," she replied. In that moment, the rancher understood fully that life was a balance of past and present, memory and hope, and that embracing both allowed the heart to grow stronger, wiser, and more capable of joy. The rancher's journey had come full circle. He had faced the memories of the Apache girl, embraced the companionship of Clara, and discovered the depth of his own heart. He had learned that love could be complex, layered, and challenging, yet it could also be patient, kind, and enduring. He understood that life's beauty lay not in perfection, but in the honesty, courage, and connection we bring to it. And so, as the night fell over the ranch, the stars shining brightly in the clear sky above, the rancher felt a quiet peace. The past had shaped him, the present had welcomed him, and the future was open with possibility. With Clara by his side, he was ready to face whatever life had in store, carrying with him the memories, the lessons, and the love that had made him who he was. He knew that life was a journey of the heart, and he was finally ready to walk it fully, honestly, and with an open heart.